another long weekend, so I'm ready to try attempt 2 at starting the engine. I did talk to Paul, who rebuilt my magneto for me, and just clarified a few things there. Everything should be good there. He did say to me that magnetos don't work very well with timing lights, so don't worry about that if that's not working too well. It should all still be sparking and should all be still be working nicely. So I went through and just did another check that I had everything timed right, just doing it manually. So just looking at where the rotor arm is when the piston's on top dead center, and making sure the contact breaker points were just about to open. Basically what he said to me is don't overthink it, so I've gone back to basics there. So I think that's all good. I don't know if we can see him. Just up there. There's a little friend who visits me, a little native New Zealand bird called a waka waka, or a fantail. They're very inquisitive, and the first time he came in here I thought he was stuck. I thought he'd got confused and come in here, so I spent ages trying to get him out, and then I discovered he could actually make his own way out just through the normal door. And then this morning he actually came into the house to see what I was up to. So he kind of pops in and out, tweets a bit, and then disappears. Anyway, back to this car. So the timing is good. It should be in a position now where it's going to start. The good thing is it's been sitting here for a week, full of oil, obviously, and it's not leaking, not too much anyway, at least not statically. When I run it, of course, and it's under pressure, then maybe a different story. I did put a little bit of working grade Loctite around the external oil pipes, made sure those were tight as well, and that should all be good. I've wrapped the little electronic cheap rev counter to the engine, and that seems to actually work. Turning it over on the starter, at least, it shows me some RPM there, so it's doing something. I don't really need that. I was just interested to see if it would work with the magneto engine. Once I get it running, I'll be able to tell for certain. And I've got my carbs here because I was looking at those and making sure there were no leaks and things. I'll come back to those. I did start making a new manifold. During the week, I must have spent at least 3 days. I have to work 3 evenings making this thing, and it just didn't go well in the end. The main problem I had is this old aluminium, this old casting. I just can't weld to it properly. So obviously I've got a TIG welder. I've played around with all the settings. I cleaned the casting as much as I possibly could. And after I cleaned it, I realized it's pretty pitted, and it actually had cracks through it already. This is before I even touched it. And I was kind of hoping those cracks were just on the surface, but after spending hours and hours on this, I found it just wasn't strong enough. It just wouldn't weld nicely. I couldn't even get a nice weld puddle forming. It's just so much crap in this aluminium. And after I did it, I thought it was kind of okay, but then I thought, I'll see how strong it is, and tapped it with a hammer and everything just broke off. So in the end, I thought, well, okay, given it's broken, I'm not going to use it. I deliberately cracked it open to see what the state of the aluminium was like, and those cracks have gone all the way through. You can see it's just black all the way through, and the whole thing's really brittle. It's quite strange. It's just not nice at all, which explains why I wasn't able to get anywhere with that. So I think the solution here would be build my own, and ideally what I would do is I would get I've modeled these up in CAD, so I've got CAD drawings for all of these. I could get this piece laser cut or water jet cut from probably 6mm aluminium plate, make the flanges the same way to go on the top, and then get a section of I think it's about 32mm, 35mm square aluminium tubing, and then I could weld something up. I could also do it out of steel, I guess, but for now, I'm going to go with the manifold that's on the car, because it's on the car, and that should work. So it was an interesting experiment, but yeah, just trying to weld up these old castings. Like I say, I couldn't get a weld pull to form properly, and it was just spitting, and there was stuff coming out of the metal all over the place, so it wasn't easy. But in some good news, I got the little roll pins I was waiting for to finish pinning the throttle levers to the shafts, and I've gone through all this to make sure I've got the fittings the right way around, and I've actually done a sort of a test setup. So I made this plate, it's just 3mm aluminium, that I could actually bolt everything to, because the problem is I have to assemble all of this, take it off there, and then bolt it onto the car. You can't assemble it on the manifold and then bolt the manifold to the car because you can't get to the bolts. So I've set it all up on here. I've gone through all the connections. I've made sure I've got the banjos the right way around now, so I did have one of them backwards, which didn't help. The other thing that was interesting is one of the carb needles, the fuel float needles was sticking, so I unstuck that, even though this is all new, possibly because it had just been sitting there dry for quite a long time. So I cleaned all that out, made sure that the needle is unstuck. And interestingly, on the second one of these, you've got the needle inside there, and you've got the little float arm that you basically bend it to a set height. And there's actually a little stop built into the cover so that the arm, when the float's not pushing it up, can't drop too far down. One of those is missing that little boss that stops it dropping too far down. So when you assemble it, you have to be really careful it doesn't drop down and let the needle valve just completely fall out, which is what had happened. So one of these was leaking. I think I have now got this set up so there are no leaks. So this tube is actually full of petrol, or it was full of petrol. I think some of it's evaporated, and I've left it sitting here just to make sure there are no leaks anywhere. You do seem to get a little bit of fuel in the throats, and I have noticed it looks a little bit wet just around the bottom of that one. So I may just just tighten up those bolts to make sure that's all good. But yeah, at the moment it's not leaking. I know fuel is getting into both bowls, and you've got the little tickler pins, I think they call them, and that sort of pushes the float down. And also doing that seems to push a little bit of fuel down into the jet, so you can actually see if it's working. So given it's not pouring petrol out, this is basically now ready to unbolt from here, bolt it back on the car, and I guess have attempt number 2 at starting it. So, update on the second starting attempt. Good news is there are still no leaks. I'm certain that the carburetors are working properly now, fuel's getting through, all of that is fine. The engine turns over, I get oil pressure, all of that's good. My little kill switch down here for the magneto is all working, but I just get nothing. So we can actually try it. Let's see. So it is all working correctly. You can see the carb pistons moving up and down. I've tried giving it choke, giving it full throttle, all of that kind of thing, and absolutely nothing, not a single little pop or cough or anything. And that's even after I've basically squirted petrol down into the inlet manifold. Not a single thing. So I suspect there's something wrong with the spark. It's not firing. It does definitely work with the leads or the spark plugs out of the engine. So yeah, I think the problem is no spark, so I'm going to have to look at that. So this is no go at the moment. I did finally go outside. I got round to fixing the MG finally. So you might remember on this one, the core plug at the back of the engine had popped out and I was in danger of overheating. I think I caught it before anything bad happened. You can probably see the little bolt there, which is how you fit the replacement core plug, and I've left the bolt in place so that core plug now physically can't blow out. After I'd repaired that, I refilled it with coolant, all that kind of stuff, started the engine again, and found that the bottom radiator hose had sprung a leak around here, which is the takeoff for the heater hose. So I had to get new hoses. I finally had a chance to fit that, and that's all good. So refilled the cooling system, everything's fine there. The car should fire right up. The problem at the moment though is that little red light. So this is all running, alternator's happily running. That's all good, the engine's running sweetly, but it looks like the alternator's not charging. So, let me just turn this off. Yeah, so the ignition light there, which effectively acts as a bridge between the alternator and the battery. So, oh, you can see there. If I turn on the ignition, if it'll focus. Come on. No, it doesn't like it. So, there we go. Normally what would happen is you turn on the ignition key, this light should come on. So, effectively what that light shows is the difference in battery voltage and alternator voltage. And when the engine starts, that light should go out. It's kind of doing the opposite, it's coming on. So effectively that means the alternator's not working, and I have measured that with a voltmeter, and yeah, that's dead. So gonna have to pull the alternator and see what's up with that. So yeah, at the moment I'm not having much luck with cars. And then the interesting thing is tomorrow there's a coffee and cars type event at the local car museum, Southwards. I've been there a few times. I think I've filmed it a few times. They've got quite a few older cars, vintage cars and things like that. And I think it's once a month in their car park, they have a sort of car meetup thing, and just people turn up with all sorts of different cars. So it looks like I can't go in the MG because that's not working. I can't go in the Land Rover because I can't get it out because we've got 6 cubic meters of bark dumped in front of the garage door. I can't take the Austin, even though it goes, because it's not road legal. And obviously the Brooklands isn't finished. So unfortunately, I may have to go in my girlfriend's Honda Fit, which is kind of a bit sad, really. But this, I'm pleased that it's not leaking fluids everywhere. It is turning over. The carbs are working and not leaking fuel. So yeah, spark. So I'll try and figure that out next. I'm sure this MG is punishing me for working on other cars and not working on it. Final disaster for the day, my knob fell off. So I'm going to have to probably fill that with epoxy to rebuild the threads. I think what I'll try is I'll coat a bolt in something silicone or something that the epoxy won't stick to, and fill this with epoxy with the threaded bolt in there, and then I can unthread the bolt when the epoxy's dry, and hopefully that'll screw back on to the gear knob there. And the reason I had to take it off is because that rubber boot had perished, it started splitting, so I fitted a new rubber boot, which was all fine. But yeah, then it fell off, so another thing to fix. Well, obviously I was feeling a little bit despondent with all my broken cars, and I was going to put the battery away to recharge it, and thought, I'll just give it one more try, and I'll try something I hadn't thought of before, which was give it a little bit of advance. So the thing I've always been worried about is that the rotor isn't directly between the contacts when it was fully retarded. So the way the contacts work on the distributor is there's a kind of quite a wide spacer that the pickup, the wires go to, because that obviously moves as the advanced retard changes, but you still need that wide spacer to be between the gap where the spark comes. And that's where I was thinking there was something not right with the magneto. When it was in that position, the spark, the contact was outside the spark gap, so it would still jump to it, but the spark wasn't very strong. So I thought, well, what if I give it a bit of an advance so that the contact is between the spark gap? Will that work? So I gave it a try, and we'll try it again now. It works. So, oh, we've got some smoke coming off something. Let's see. Oh, I wasn't quick enough to see what the oil pressure was like, but it runs. So that needed quite a bit of advance there to actually get it to fire. So I'm thinking that is actually what the problem is, that the number one contact, or the spark plug contacts aren't in the right place when it's actually trying to fire. But it runs. It even revved a little bit, so that's amazing. I'm really pleased with that. I'll have to see if that can be adjusted a little bit, because as it is at the moment, I can't get it set to the right static timing like that. So this was set pretty much to the static timing, which is number one fires at top dead center, which is how I had it set. So I needed to come advanced a bit from that to get it to fire, but it runs. Amazing.